What's up, everybody? I'm John Middlekauff. You know what I need you to do. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. We got content for days reacting to every NFL game all the time, every single day. Subscribe, like the videos. Let's go. Daniel Jones will no longer be the starter. And I think it's safe to say if all goes according to plan, he has taken his last snap for the Giants. Because like Russell Wilson last year and Derek Carr 2 years ago, because of injury guarantees, if they were to get hurt, they would be guaranteed money into the following year, right? And for Daniel Jones, that number I think is $23 million. So if they just cut him at the end of the season, I don't know exactly, they'll have some dead cap, but in terms of guaranteed money next year, they've already paid him $82 million. He's made $82 million the last 2 seasons to be the starting quarterback for a team that when he started went 3-13. And in those 16 games, he threw 10 touchdowns and 13 interceptions. He has been one of the, I would say, craziest failures we've ever seen when it comes to a contract and just an immediate, like, this guy can't play. Like, he's just not a very good player at all. Like, you have no chance when he's your starting quarterback to beat the opposing team on a Sunday, whether that team is the Eagles or whether that team is just some random shitty team. You are probably going to lose when Daniel Jones is starting quarterback. Now, they're going to Tommy Cutlets and not Drew Lock, who they gave $5 million to. And a lot of people are reporting that that's because of incentives and they don't want to pay him either. And I think John Mara is in this weird spot. And listen, I'm not absolving him from this situation. He took part in what I would consider like legal fraud. That's what Daniel Jones and his agents just committed. Legal fraud. $82 million for that. Give me a break. I saw a headline the other day, and I clicked on the article that CNN and Chris Wallace are going their separate ways. And Chris kind of announced that he was leaving to start his own ventures. And it turns out they were paying him $7 million, which I don't know much about, like, his shows. And I was reading that his viewership is obviously greatly diminished over the last 4 or 5 years. And in this business, right, and when I worked in radio and in television, they sell ads based on the demo 24 to 54, or maybe it's 25 to 54, whatever, that range. In sports talk radio, for example, forever, it was that range, men only. And that's what you sold your advertisers on. Well, they were paying him $7 million, and there were less than 85,000 people that fit that demo. Like, on the open market, Chris Wallace wouldn't sniff 500 grand. It definitely ain't like he's slinging a lot of product. His deal for the last couple years, making that type money, when that was his audience, I'd consider that like legal fraud. It's a great gig if you can get it. It's legalized stealing. You're getting paid for something that you cannot produce. And that's what happened with Daniel Jones. They gave him $82 million over a 2-year period, and he was easily one of the worst players in the NFL to continue to start at any position. And obviously, when you're an awful player at quarterback, your team's going to blow. And it's not all his fault. I mean, it's not like they were loaded at wide receiver. Their offensive line the last couple of years hasn't been great. But you watch him and you go, this guy's not a very good player. He'd be a good backup. And he'd probably make $3, $4, $5 million. Well, there's a big difference of paying a guy $4 million to be your backup and paying him $42 million to be your starter. And the Giants, listen, it's hard to figure out exactly who's to blame for this because clearly the owner had his hands in this. He viewed him as the more athletic Eli Manning, which clearly wasn't true. Joe Shane, unless he's just, being the ultimate company man, sang his praises every single turn that he came and a microphone was sitting in front of him. Every interview, every time he talked on Hard Knocks, he was very complimentary of Daniel Jones. There's no way to dispute that, and he's been now for several years. Brian Daboll is harder to gauge, but I think after, when they went 9-8 and they made the playoffs and won a playoff game, it felt like he was okay with them. Now, at that price point, I don't know. But whenever coaches go, that's not my area of expertise. I don't deal with the cap. True. Like, I'm not expecting you to break down the contract word for word. But if you're going to be a head coach in the NFL, you got to have a pretty fucking good idea what players are worth, if this is a good idea or this is a bad idea, big picture wise, especially when it comes down to quarterback. So if he was on board as well, like, it's an institutional disaster. And the Giants got robbed, which, whatever. Sometimes if our houses get robbed and we have insurance, like, you can figure it out. It sucks, but that's not the way this works, right? This guy has taken your money, given you very little, and halted any progress for the organization. And now you've been lapped in the division and in the conference, right? Obviously, Jalen and Jaden and the Eagles and Washington are good. The Cowboys are having an awful season, but the Giants would give, I don't know, their left leg to have Dak Prescott as the quarterback of their team. So how does this team get out of this? How does this team acquire a new quarterback? I don't know. I mean, you can hope in the draft, but what if they don't have the number one overall pick? Like, this is an awful quarterback draft. Let me repeat, an awful quarterback draft. So I always hear whenever I read about these bad teams or listen to people that cover these bad teams, like, they got to take a quarter. They do. There aren't just quarterbacks everywhere in this draft. This is not 2024 where there were 12 guys, or excuse me, 6 guys taking the top 12 picks that most people thought could play. And if, we'll find out in time, but so far it's going pretty good. Caleb kind of shut everyone up against the Packers. Like, okay, he can play. Jaden's had a fantastic rookie year. Drake May looks excellent. Bo Nix is starting to trend again toward the rookie of the year. Hell, I even looked at one of the little 4 boxes on my TV when Atlanta was getting their teeth kicked in by Denver, and they brought in Penix, and he slung it a couple times across the middle. I'm like, hell yeah, Michael, I see you. So, man, I feel for Giants fans. You paid $82 million. You had to watch this, and your organization is just in complete shambles. Can I tell you about my new friends? No Days Wasted. The holiday season, means going to parties, hanging out with the boys, having a few cocktails, watching the game, picking it with some old friends. So be ready to celebrate and bounce back the next day with DHM Detox, the ultimate vitamin for when drinking. It's a science-backed, functional herbal supplement loaded with antioxidants and liver-supporting ingredients. You just take these 2 capsules right after a few drinks. And DHM Detox gets to work so you can wake up feeling fresh for kickoff. No Days Wasted is running the biggest sale of the year for Black Friday. Get 30% off all orders this week. Stock up now for the holiday season and your next game day celebration. The Detox supports your body's natural response to drinking by helping break down the toxins so you don't feel sluggish the next day. How awesome is that? Don't love it? No Days Wasted offers a full refund on your first order of a 15-pack, no questions asked. Don't waste time feeling sluggish after a night out. It's a completely risk-free purchase. Feel great or your money back on your first order. Head over to nodayswasted.com/3andout and use code 3andout. That's number 3, ANDOUT, to get 30% off your order. That's nodayswasted/3andout for 30% off and free shipping. You know what's funny about the Ravens? And it's weird about Lamar, right? I guess the Chiefs get this sometimes too. Like, everyone wants to argue about their greatness, or if they're getting over on everybody by the referees giving them calls, if they're actually the most overrated good team in the history of the world. It's like, guys, they've won 3 Super Bowls in 5 years. They went to another one over that period of time, and they were currently 9-0 before kickoff at Buffalo. Like, we can argue till we're blue in the face. Like, I would say just the black and white numbers are on their side. They win a lot, and that's really the only goal. And they have 3 rings to show for it. But, like, the Ravens are a pretty polarizing team, in part because, like, Lamar defenders, I think, can be really exhausting. Like, we're not arguing if Lamar's a good player or not anymore. Like, that ended several years ago. And let's face it, the organization was part of the problem. Remember, it's like, are you guys going to pay him? And it was like they had this long staring contest. That wasn't anyone's opinion. That was Bisciotti DaCosta and John Harbaugh against like Lamar, I think his mom's his agent. Like that was weird. Like they did that. It's like, were they trade him to Atlanta? It's like, no, they're not going to trade him, but they kind of made him work for that contract physically and emotionally. And then the last couple of years, he's a remarkable player. He is a Hall of Fame player. He is one of the more fun players to watch in the history of the NFL. But like, we got some data points now. In the biggest games against the best teams, it's been a struggle. And he's played two massive games these last 2 years. The Kansas City Chiefs in the AFC Championship game, and then the Pittsburgh Steelers yesterday that was huge for Baltimore. Because if they lost, because they already shit the bed against, somehow they lost to the Raiders week 2. You lose to the Chiefs week 1, okay, it's the NFL. They're on the road, they're better than you, whatever. The Browns divisional game, that's going to happen. If you go 13-4, like you're going to lose a random divisional game. I got no issue with that. But the Pittsburgh Steelers, they didn't score a touchdown. You have your two biggest games when you have one of the greatest quarterbacks. That's all I ever hear. And listen, I've even come around. I'm like, yeah, he's fucking awesome. The Chiefs scored 17 points in that playoff game. The Pittsburgh Steelers scored 18 points yesterday and did not score a touchdown. So in your two biggest games of the last calendar year, you have lost them both with this all-time great quarterback when the opponent has averaged 17.5 points. Let's face it, going into that game on Sunday, if I would have told you the Steelers are not going to score a touchdown, and they'll kick a lot of field goals, but they will not eclipse 20 points, I know what I would have done. I would have moved my bet from taking the Steelers as a dog at home and putting it all on the Ravens. I'd be like, I bet they win this thing 25-15. 24-13. I guess that wouldn't 24-12. I would have thought of something like that. Wait, they're not going to score a touchdown? Yeah, the Ravens are going to win the game. And it's like, no, actually, the game happened, and that's not what happened. Everyone's like, the drops. The drops. It's like, guys, he completed 16 passes. It wasn't all fucking drops. And I think what happens against the Steelers and the Chiefs is these teams limit his ability to just run around and freelance and take off nonstop. They don't allow it. And when he scrambles, he is not going to take off. And in his mind, I'm going to throw. And sometimes yesterday, he did hit some guys in stride and they dropped the ball. And sometimes he airmails it or skipped a ball. Like it was a bad performance. And it's something to keep an eye on now moving forward in these playoffs because we had the data points in previous years in the playoffs alone. And now we have this like major Steeler data point of like, he plays like shit against them. It's not arguable anymore, right? It's like we have the eye test, we have the fucking data. It's just factual. Now he beats the crap out of most other teams. And that's awesome. And that's how you make all this money. And that's how you lead your team to the playoffs every year. But he's at the point now where it's like just basically judged on playoff victories and how many times you win the division, right? I mean, that's like ultimately what Brady started rattling off is they won the division like 15 out of 16 years, won a bunch of playoff games, went to Super Bowls and won Super Bowls. Like it's no longer about touchdown. Like all that stuff's cool and it's awesome on Sunday. But like all these guys and the crew of guys he's chasing now is like playoff victories, Super Bowls. And if you can't beat Mahomes, so be it. Like I'll never hold that against you if you can't beat the Chiefs because they beat everybody. Just like the Patriots. You couldn't beat the Patriots. Okay, so be it. But like if you get to the playoffs and you play the Pittsburgh Steelers in round 1 and it's like the 3-6, you can't lose that game and be taken seriously. Like that's kind of where we're at. And I think the pressure after yesterday amps up because this offense turns into a pumpkin. It feels like when everyone's paying attention. And it really, really matters. And it really, really matters. It's like, wait, they scored 18 points and you lost? And honestly, you were always kind of trailing and it never felt like you were going to win the game? Bizarre. Listen, I'm not acting like the Steelers are God's greatest gift to football. I mean, Russell took some awful sacks yesterday. He holds on to the ball too long, partly because like when they're passing game, it's like going deep. throwing that lollipop down the sideline. Don't really attack the middle of the field. That's never been his thing. I thought one thing cool they did yesterday is they brought in Fields a couple times for kind of that zone read. He kept it and he took off. Should have dove forward at the end of the game to ice it. He slid, but they ended up getting it regardless. That's a cool little element to their offense. But are the Steelers winning multiple playoff games playing like that? It's not like Russell looked great yesterday. And the Ravens offense, think about this. Russell did not score or did not throw a touchdown against the Ravens. Joe Burrow in 2 games has 9 touchdowns. Like this is an offense, or excuse me, a pass defense that is terrible. And the Steelers couldn't exploit that, especially in the red zone. So make me a little nervous if I'm the Steelers, big picture wise. Very proud of my squad, proud of my guy Tomlin, but it's just to beat the Chiefs, to beat the Bills, definitely the Bills. Honestly, to beat the Ravens again, like you're probably gonna have to score some touchdowns.